Microtransactions are in-app purchases designed to benefit the player's game. These can be either cosmetics or game-breaking changes. A great example of this would be Activision, a company that owns major games such as Call of Duty, Overwatch and Candy Crush, which are specifically designed to milk as much money out of the player as possible. You've likely heard about a video game called Fortnite, which since its release in late July 2017 has generated $1 billion from microtransactions and has continued growing ever since. Children, the demographic most likely to buy microtransactions, usually don't ask their parents' permission beforehand, with these purchases being only 1 or 2 clicks away. It means you should monitor your card to make sure your child hasn't used it yet. For a more in-depth view, here's what a psychologist has to say about the mental side of it. We're here with Simon to discuss the effects of microtransactions. So if someone was to grow up spending money on microtransactions, could that turn into a grey addictions in the future?
Yes, as we're growing up, we're sort of setting down the patterns of behaviour, and there's a lot of controversy over microtransactions within video games at the moment, saying that it's encouraging children to develop addictive patterns of behaviour. In the same way that people have linked use of energy drinks in children to use of drugs in later life, it's whenever you're using something to get a feeling, to get a reward, that can start to become ingrained in your mind. And the features of things like loot boxes in video games have some of the similarities of gambling and addictive behaviour in later life as well. So often giving children the first go for free, just like any sort of drug pusher might, just to get people hooked in. Also that feeling of, just thinking just one more go and I might get the right reward or right prize. And also that feeling of uncertainty, you don't know what you're going to get. There's always just that little pull to have another go. So yeah, it certainly can set up these behaviours that could be carried on in later life.
And what advice would you give someone that has a gambling or microtransaction addiction?
Okay, there's a few different ways to deal with that. One of the most interesting ways is narrative therapy, where you look at the individual child who has realised this is a problem. Sometimes they'll only start to realise that as a parent gets a huge credit card bill. There's been cases where people have 700,000 quid credit card bills coming in, just made up of all these microtransactions. And then if the child realises that this is a problem, then they can try and look at what is the game doing for them, what do they get out of it, and tell them, see what the story is, and see if they can apply that to their real life. So narrative therapy tries to get the child to retell a story. They could look at what have you done in the game where you work together with others, where you manage to teamwork and achieve a goal. I'm sure they'll have done that in many of these games. Then they can try and see how they can do that in their real life. So starting to get the skills that they've developed and put them into real use is what narrative therapy is about. Also, you could have things like cognitive behavioural therapy, where when that impulse to bet, to buy another loot box, to get another upgrade comes, just to sort of realise that the reward, the little buzz, the rush of excitement that you get from purchasing that goes away quite quickly. It's an irrational belief that you're going to feel better off it in the long term, so slowly we can challenge those ideas.
Do you think there are enough services that are able to help people with these types of addictions?
There are a growing number of services for video game and gambling addiction, gambling especially, but not as many directed towards young people or children. Video game addiction is getting a lot more press coverage and academic coverage, but yeah, the microtransactions, I guess, is quite an emerging difficulty. So a lot of countries and states don't class it as gambling. They say you are purchasing, gameplay, purchasing things, whereas as we've seen with things like loot boxes, it certainly is a gamble. You're just wondering, what are you going to get? So there's a gambling element in it. So far there's not really enough services available.
And what do you think we as a society could do in order to raise awareness about microtransaction?
Well, I guess, films like this can raise awareness. It's good to have perhaps a little bit of a discussion with children who are using these games, like what happens in them, because so often they're given away for free, but then there's all these tiny little extra additions for, you know, new clothing or weapons or cars or whatever that slowly add up. If the parents start to get a bit more of an understanding of them, perhaps the companies like Apple and Google in the various app stores, maybe they need to ask for more permissions from whoever's paying that bill, showing what the average price is perhaps to play this over the long term. It used to be you bought a game, it was 40 quid and that's that. Now it's maybe a lot more than that over the long term.
And finally, what could be some advice for parents when giving their children permissions to purchase in-game microtransactions using their parents' credit card?
Yes, so some advice. Perhaps put a budget on it. Say, you know, like each month maybe I'll allow you whatever, £10 or £20 for these transactions, and use it wisely, spread it out rather than, you know, spending it all in one go. So start, or perhaps maybe they could earn that money around the house. Just try and see that currency has a lot of work to it. To get £10 could well be an hour's hard work for somebody. So if the child starts to understand that, especially as so many of the in-game currencies like lapis or whatever in Final Fantasy is, you know, if they say 5,000 of that, it doesn't sound like anything and you don't know what it is, but if they realise that's probably about £30, which is a lot of money, then they start to really equate it with the real world. Maybe getting that link between the real world and the computerised world might be a good thing to do.
All right, well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.